There's a sign that almost no one relates to dementia because it does not look like a memory issue. It does not look like an illness, and often it does not even seem important. Most people wait for the day they start forgetting names, losing keys, or repeating the same question. But the brain, before reaching that point, can spend years sending much quieter warnings. Changes in smell, strange dreams, apathy without sadness, reactions that do not fit the person they used to be, or a way of walking that just seems like age. And there is the danger. When we call it old age, we can lose a valuable window. Today, I do not want to scare you or make you think that every little change means dementia. On the contrary, I want to explain to you, calmly and clearly, the 5 signs that neurologists take seriously because they can appear long before memory fails.
Stay until the end because the 5th sign is seen with the eyes. It happens when walking, and many families confuse it with weak knees when sometimes the real warning comes from the brain. And recognizing it in time can change everything right now. Before continuing, I want you to understand something important. What I'm going to explain to you today is not designed to fill you with fear. Quite the opposite. My goal is to help you recognize signs that often appear years before serious memory problems, when there is still a real opportunity to act. Because most people believe that dementia begins the day someone forgets names or gets lost on the street. But the brain almost never works like that. First, it whispers. It sends small, silent signs, so normal that they are often confused with aging.
And one of the most ignored ones is related to something almost no one would associate with the brain: smell. Let me ask you something. Have you felt that certain smells no longer reach you the same as before? Maybe your morning coffee no longer has the same intense aroma. Maybe it takes you longer to notice that something is burning in the kitchen. Or someone tastes the food and says it has too much garlic or too much salt while you barely perceive the flavor. Most people immediately think of allergies, colds, or simply age. And yes, losing a little olfactory sensitivity over the years can be relatively normal. The problem appears when that loss is more pronounced, progressive, or occurs without a clear cause. Because here is something many do not know. The olfactory nerve, that delicate connection between the nose and the brain, could be one of the first routes where certain neurological changes related to Alzheimer's begin. Some researchers believe that abnormal proteins associated with this disease could first accumulate in the olfactory pathways before spreading to other regions of the brain. And the most disturbing thing is that this can happen many years before the first obvious memory problem. In fact, a follow-up study conducted on almost 3,000 adults between 57 and 85 years old found something surprising. People who could not recognize at least 4 out of 5 common smells had approximately twice the risk of developing dementia in the following 5 years. Now I want you to understand this calmly. Losing your sense of smell does not automatically mean Alzheimer's. I do not want you to leave here terrified thinking that every change is a sentence. But it can be a sign that deserves attention, especially when it appears along with other subtle changes. I remember a patient, Susan, 68 years old. She came to the office for a completely different reason, and, almost at the end, she mentioned something seemingly unimportant. "Doctor, lately I put a lot of seasoning in my food because I feel it no longer tastes like anything." That phrase made me stop. I asked her if she also noticed fewer smells. She thought for a few seconds and replied, "Now that you mention it, coffee has not smelled the same for a long time." We started investigating. It was not a sinus infection. It was not a nasal problem. It was an early neurological sign. And there is the real lesson for today. The brain often asks for help in silence, not with screams, not with pain, but with small daily changes that almost no one relates to memory. That is why learning to listen to those signs can make a huge difference in the coming years. Now then, smell is only the first sign. The second can seem even more confusing because it happens in a place where almost no one thinks about the brain. The bed during the night, when we think the body is finally resting. Has anyone told you that you move a lot while sleeping? That you talk, yell, kick, or move your arms as if you were defending yourself from something? Or have you seen it in your spouse, your father, or your mother? They used to sleep peacefully, and suddenly, over the years, their sleep has become restless. The person dreams they are running, fleeing, fighting, and their body seems to obey the dream. This has a medical name, REM, sleep behavior disorder. And I want to explain it calmly, because not all nighttime movement means this. Many people have nightmares, talk in their sleep, or move their legs due to exhaustion, stress, or medications. That can happen and does not always indicate something serious. What is concerning here is a specific pattern. Very vivid dreams, accompanied by clear, repeated, sometimes sudden physical movements.
The REM phase is the time when the brain dreams most intensely. But under normal conditions, something extraordinary happens. The brain temporarily turns off the muscles, as if it flipped the body's switch to protect us. Thanks to that natural paralysis, we can dream that we are running without actually running, or dream that we are fighting without hitting anyone. But when that mechanism fails, the body begins to act out the dream. And there appears the sign that deserves attention. Not because it should cause panic, but because it can open an early window into what is happening deep in the nervous system. The brainstem works like a night watchman. During REM sleep, it sends orders to keep the muscles still. But if certain neurons lose coordination, that watchman starts to fail. In some people, this phenomenon has been linked to deposits of a protein called alpha-synuclein, linked to diseases like Parkinson's, Lewy body dementia, and some neurodegenerative disorders. According to a review published in The Lancet Neurology, and based on longitudinal studies by neurologist Ronald Postema, more than 80% of people with isolated REM sleep behavior disorder develop neurodegenerative diseases related to alpha-synuclein over the years.
That is a strong piece of data, but it must be said responsibly. It does not mean that every nightmare announces a disease. It means that when these movements are repeated and appear without a clear explanation, it is advisable to consult a doctor or a sleep clinic. I have seen families take years to mention it because they see it as a household oddity. But sometimes those restless nights are letters the brain sends before memory fails. Therefore, if it happens frequently, if there are blows, falls, injuries, or fear of sleeping, do not ignore it. Write it down. Observe when it happens. Speak with a professional.
But if smell and sleep already seemed like unexpected signs, the third is usually even more confusing, because it has nothing to do with memory. It does not start by forgetting names. It does not start by losing objects. It begins, often, with something families interpret as fatigue, age, or simply a different way of looking at life. I am talking about apathy, and I want you to think about this for a moment. Do you know someone who gradually stopped being interested in the things that used to give them life? They no longer call friends. They no longer suggest going out. Hobbies slowly disappear. Gardening, playing cards, traveling, walking, even Sunday football games stop mattering to them. But it does not happen with drama. There are no constant tears. There is no major emotional crisis. It just seems like something inside that person has turned off. And almost always the same explanation appears. It is normal. They are older now. They have less energy. With age, you change. But this is where we must pay attention. Because apathy is not the same as sadness, nor is it exactly the same as depression. Depression usually hurts. The person suffers, gets anxious, expresses distress. Apathy, on the other hand, is often silent. It is the progressive disappearance of motivation, initiative, and the desire to participate in life. And before continuing, I want to be very clear. Apathy is common and can have many causes. Grief, chronic pain, certain medications, social isolation, hormonal problems, or even emotional exhaustion can cause it. We are not saying that every less active person has a neurodegenerative disease. What interests us today is something else. A persistent apathy, which appears without an obvious emotional explanation and settles in slowly. A kind of inner disconnection that the family notices, but often does not know how to interpret. Because when this occurs in the context of early cognitive decline, it reflects very specific changes in the brain, especially in the prefrontal cortex, the region behind the forehead that participates in profoundly human functions. Initiative, planning, curiosity, the interest in acting and connecting with the world. When those networks begin to lose efficiency, the first sign is not always forgetfulness. Sometimes it is simply the absence of desire.
and this is something science has been observing for years. Some studies that followed older adults for more than 12 years found that people with significant apathy, even without clear memory impairments at the beginning, were 2 to 3 times more likely to develop dementia over time.
I will never forget a patient I will call Robert. He was 72 years old and had always been an active, curious, sociable man. He loved tending the garden, meeting up with his friends and discussing the news every afternoon. But something slowly started to change. His wife told me a phrase I still remember perfectly. "Doctor, it is not that he is sad. It is as if he had turned something off inside." Robert no longer wanted to go out. He spent hours sitting staring into space, with no real interest in television, books, or conversations. When the family suggested plans, he responded politely, but without enthusiasm. And as happens in so many families, everyone thought it was simply aging, until they came to the office. The studies showed something important. The problem was not only emotional. There were early neurological signs behind that silent change. And here is the most delicate part of this sign. Apathy hides very well, because the person experiencing it often does not feel the need to ask for help, and their surroundings usually interpret it as character, fatigue, or age. Thus, months pass, sometimes years, while the brain continues to change in silence. But the fourth sign is probably one of the most painful for families, because it does not look like an illness. It does not start with obvious forgetfulness or confusion. It starts with something much more confusing, a change in the person's way of being.
And that is precisely what makes it misunderstood so often. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt that someone close to you no longer seems like themselves? Not because they have lost their memory, but because they act in a way they never would have acted before. Inappropriate comments in front of other people, uncomfortable jokes, exaggerated reactions to small things, a new, harsh, hard-to-recognize irritability. Or maybe the opposite, impulsive, almost childish behaviors, spending money without thinking, eating uncontrollably, suddenly obsessing over activities or interests they never cared about before. And then the family starts saying phrases I constantly hear in the office. He is getting weird. No one can stand him anymore. It is as if he changed inside.
And here I want to make an important pause. Changing a little with the years is normal. Age can make us less patient, more direct, or more sensitive to stress. There is also loss, loneliness, financial problems, physical pain, or depression that can alter a person's character without a neurological disease behind it. But what I am describing today is different. It is a change that breaks with the person's history, something that does not fit with who they always were. And it often has a strange, uninhibited, almost cartoonish component that deeply confuses those who know that person best. Because there is a region of the brain whose main function is to act as a brake. It is called the orbitofrontal cortex and is located just behind the forehead, above the eyes. Its job is to help us evaluate what we are going to say or do before doing it. It is the part of the brain that regulates impulses, that filters, that keeps our emotions and our behavior within what is socially appropriate. When that region begins to deteriorate, something that happens especially characteristically in frontotemporal dementia, that brake begins to fail. And the result can be exactly what families describe: inappropriate comments, impulsivity, loss of social tact, strange behaviors, or disproportionate emotional reactions. The hardest part about this sign is that often the person themselves does not perceive that something has changed. From their point of view, they are simply being honest, spontaneous, or saying what they think. Meanwhile, the family begins to suffer without understanding what is really happening. I will never forget the case of David. He was 71 years old and had been a reserved, polite, and cautious man with words all his life. His daughter came to the office before him, with a mixture of sadness and exhaustion that I have seen too many times. She told me that in the last year, her father had started making uncomfortable comments in front of the grandchildren, laughed at inappropriate times, and had made several impulsive purchases completely out of character for him. At a family dinner, he said something offensive in front of everyone, and the family was paralyzed. "Doctor," his daughter told me,
we feel like we do not recognize him anymore. And that phrase carries a lot of weight when it appears in the office. I explained something to her that completely changed the way they looked at the situation. Her father was not acting that way because he wanted to cause harm, nor was it simply bad temper. What they described had a real neurological explanation. His brain was changing silently. And here's one of the most important parts of all this. Frontotemporal dementia, especially in the early stages, can easily be confused with depression, psychiatric disorders, or personality problems. Many people spend months, even years, receiving treatments that do not help because no one identifies the right sign in time. And there is also another reality that very few people know. This disease does not always begin after 80 years of age. Some people can start around 55 or 60 when they are still working, driving, making plans, and seemingly leading a normal life.
That is why this sign deserves so much attention. Because sometimes the brain does not lose memory first. Sometimes the filter that helps us be who we have always been is lost first. But there is a fifth sign that, if I am honest, is one of the ones that has made me reflect the most in recent years. Because it does not need complex analysis. It does not require a sophisticated scanner. It does not appear first on a medical paper. It can be seen with your own eyes. And even so, it often goes unnoticed. It has to do with the way of walking. Let me ask you something. Have you noticed that someone close to you no longer walks the same as before? Maybe their steps are shorter, slower, more insecure, as if their body hesitated before moving forward. Maybe that person slightly drags their feet or takes an extra second to get going when standing up from a chair. Or maybe you are the one who has started to feel something different. Going downstairs requires more attention. Uneven ground creates a new insecurity. Walking slower, not because you want to, but because your body seems to ask for caution. And of course, most people immediately think of their knees, their hips, their back, or simply their age. And it is true that over the years, walking changes. Balance requires more effort. Reflexes are slower. The body naturally becomes more cautious. That is part of normal aging. But an important difference appears here. Not all changes in walking come solely from muscles or joints. Because walking, from a neurological point of view, is one of the most sophisticated tasks the human brain performs. Each step involves coordination, balance, spatial perception, automatic memory, movement planning, and the ability to anticipate obstacles. All that happens in silence, in just fractions of a second. The brain works like a great orchestra conductor. The basal ganglia, the cerebellum, the motor cortex, and other regions work together so we can move without consciously thinking about every step. And when any of those regions begins to lose efficiency, even very early on, walking can begin to change before clear memory problems appear. In fact, some research has found something surprising. Walking speed can be one of the most useful indicators for detecting the risk of cognitive decline in older adults. And when you understand how the brain works, it makes sense. Because walking speed does not depend solely on the legs. It depends on the brain that coordinates those legs. And here appears a clinical observation that always draws a lot of attention. In the office, we sometimes ask for something very simple: walking while holding a conversation. A healthy person can usually do both things at the same time without difficulty. But in the early stages of neurological decline, some people start to show something curious. When they talk, they stop walking smoothly, or they slow down significantly, as if the brain could no longer handle the two tasks at the same time with the same ease as before. It is a small sign, but a very revealing one. There is also a pattern that many neurologists know well and receives a very graphic name: magnetic gait. Steps become short, shuffling with little lifting of the feet. It gives the feeling that the shoes are glued to the floor, as if a magnet were pulling them down. And this is important because it can appear in some specific neurological diseases, including normal pressure hydrocephalus, a condition that in certain cases can be treated if detected in time. That is why I want you to remember something fundamental. It is not about obsessively analyzing every step or living in fear. It is about observing patterns. Real changes compared to how that person walked years ago, especially if they appear along with slowness, balance problems, apathy, sleep disturbances, or behavioral changes.
Because sometimes the brain does not speak first through memory. Sometimes it speaks through the feet. I want you to end this video with something much more important than fear: perspective. Because after hearing all these signs, it would be very easy to start worrying about every little change. Noticing the smell of coffee less, sleeping restlessly, feeling more tired or walking slower. But that is not the goal of this content. The goal is to give you information to better understand your brain before the problems are too big to ignore. And here comes the hopeful part. Today we know much more than we did 20 years ago. We know that the aging brain still retains the ability to adapt. We know that certain habits can help protect memory, attention, and quality of life for longer. I am not talking about miracle solutions or absolute promises. I am talking about real prevention, about small decisions repeated over years. Moving the body regularly, sleeping better, having conversations, learning new things, managing blood pressure, diabetes, and hearing, maintaining social connections. All of that can influence much more than most imagine. And that is exactly why it is so important to detect the signs early. Because prevention works best during that window of opportunity we talked about at the beginning. Now then, I want to make something very clear. Nothing you have heard today should be used to diagnose yourself. These signs are not medical diagnoses. Many people present some of these changes and never develop dementia. The human brain is complex, and each person has a different medical history. The right thing is not to panic. The right thing is to observe patterns, and if the changes are persistent, clear, or concerning, talk about it with a health professional. Sometimes a timely evaluation can bring peace of mind, and other times it can help detect problems when there are still more options to act on. So, if you or someone close to you presents significant changes in memory, behavior, sleep, emotional state, or walking, it is highly recommended to consult a doctor or a neurology specialist. Seeking help is not overreacting. It is taking care of something as valuable as your own identity. And I want to end with a personal reflection. Dementia does not begin the day someone forgets a name. Often it begins long before, with small signs that the brain leaves in silence. Learning to recognize them does not mean living in fear. It means living with more awareness, more attention, and more opportunities to protect what makes us who we are. The content of this video is for informational and educational purposes only. It does not replace a medical diagnosis, a professional consultation, or individualized treatment. Each symptom can have multiple causes, and only a comprehensive clinical evaluation can interpret it correctly.